and Palestine will now request full membership from the Security Council, though America has already warned it is going to veto such a request. But Pakistan recognized Bangladesh relatively quickly, within 3 years, but Israel even after a 57-year occupation. This led to US President Biden saying that Netanyahu is a good friend, but that he has to change, given that you cannot say there is no Palestinian state at all in the future. Day after bloody day to the state of Palestine. Palestinian statehood, to my mind, is long overdue. 143 states in the General Assembly recently recognized Palestine as a sovereign state and endowed the Palestinian Authority with some new procedural rights and privileges at the United Nations. Now, this resolution does not make Palestine a UN member. Only a Security Council recommendation can do that. And Palestine will now request full membership from the Security Council, though America has already warned it is going to veto such a request. The question of whether Palestine is a state under international law is a bit of a murky one. The 1933 Montevideo Convention says that to be considered a state, an entity must have a permanent population, a defined territory, its own government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. It is argued that all of these include or amount to the notion that the state should itself be independent. According to one theory, so long as you meet these criteria, you're a state. And that statehood continues even when they're not properly fulfilled. So even if you have no government for a while, you're still a state. If you have disputed territory, or even if all of your population leaves for a period of time, you're still going to be a state. Another theory says that you are a state dependent on the recognition of other states, which are going to decide if you're a state and whether to include you into the fold of the international community. That is why a lot of member states are now coming together to recognize the state of Palestine to preempt the lack of recognition by America and Israel. As an indication of how important recognition can be, while Bangladesh became a state in 1971 and was recognized by a number of other UN member states at the time, it was only shortly after Pakistan recognized Bangladesh in 1974 that it was admitted as a member state of the UN. Up until then, the unresolved situation with Pakistani recognition was viewed as being still at play in precluding Bangladesh's recognition at the United Nations. Now, the worry about applying the Pakistan-Bangladesh precedent to this case is the notion that issues should be resolved before recognition is granted, which is also in a way what America is arguing. But Pakistan recognized Bangladesh relatively quickly, within 3 years, but Israel, even after a 57-year occupation, has demonstrated that it won't be recognizing the state of Palestine. The Israeli ambassador to the UK said late last year that there was absolutely no chance of Israel accepting a Palestinian state. Similarly, Prime Minister Netanyahu has assured his party that he is the only one who can prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. This led to US President Biden saying that Netanyahu is a good friend, but that he has to change, given that you cannot say there is no Palestinian state at all in the future. But that is what Israel is saying. And that is why votes like the recent one at the General Assembly are so important. It is crucial now that the rest of the world comes together to recognize the state of Palestine and increasingly isolate Israel and the US and its client states which vote against Palestine's bid for statehood. While many international lawyers do argue that Palestine is already a state, I don't think Palestine is yet a state. It is not independent. All of its territory is under occupation and has been since 1967. And no other state, even if they recognize Palestine as a state, act the way they would if it was a state. Otherwise, we'd see a similar conflict like we are seeing with Russia and Ukraine between two sovereign states. And we know that this conflict in and of itself is very different. The nature of it is very different because Palestine remains under occupation. But after seeing the Israeli ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, quite comically shred a copy of the UN Charter and accuse member states of trying to admit a terror state within their ranks, all while Israel is undertaking yet another brutal onslaught of a territory it is attempting to starve to death, what comes to my mind are the words of an article by the Middle East Policy Council, which says that few states on earth can claim the degree and intensity of allegiance which the people of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip manifest day after bloody day to the state of Palestine. Palestinian statehood, to my mind, is long overdue.